Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carillo.
Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Vikram Raya. He is a Georgetown-trained doctor. He retired from medicine when he was 40 and has since raised $65 million for his deals and currently controls over $350 million worth of real estate. So thank you so much for being on the show, Vic.
Thanks, Charles. Really excited, man.
So you have a very interesting background. Can you give us a little bit a taste of your background, both personally and professionally, before getting involved in real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. My whole thought process growing up was, I've come from a stable middle-class family, but what I noticed was my parents always fought about money, Charles. And that's one thing I was like, all right, when I grow up, I want to figure out this money thing because I don't want to, I want to have peace of mind. I want to make everyone happy around me. And so I don't know, it sort of drove me. So in the typical Indian family household, you're either a doctor, engineer, or you're a loser. So I was sort of like, all right, this medicine thing seems interesting. I want to definitely get into it. And something very interesting happened, Charles. 7 people in my family died of heart attacks. And I was like, oh my God, I need to learn this actually. This is not just something like I should do. I need to do this to not only protect my family, but people all over the country. I mean, in the world, this is the number one killer, out there. So, and I had a passion for it. So, I studied, worked my tail off, got into medical school. And to be honest with you, nothing in life has been easy, Charles. It's not that I'm the most gifted, the brainiac, the highest SEG score, none of that. It's always been more phenomenal will versus phenomenal skill. But that served me well, and it serves me even to this day in real estate. But I got into medical school. Then I got into training. I went to Georgetown. I started doing my internal medicine. Then I went out to Milwaukee to do my fellowship in cardiology. And I was like, oh my God, this is the holy land. This is it. I'm ready to go. And then what I noticed was all my attendings, all these doctors who I looked up to, they were just crushing themselves, working like 80, 90, 100 hours, insane hours, and all for like the sake of, trading dollars for hours. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I thought this was the end game. And so at that point, I was like, maybe I need to have something else on the side. And this is commonly known, as we all know, as the side hustle, right? This is the origin of my side hustle. I'm like, all right, what can I do? And Charles, this is what I did. I was like, all right, I never hired a coach before. I've never invested in myself. And I was like, all right, let me learn about options. And so I actually got an options coach and learned about options trading. It was okay for the first couple of weeks. And then, I started losing. And then, also it was taking a lot of time out of, I was newly married. I was in a cardiology fellowship which was highly competitive and busy. And I was trying to be an options trader. I'm like, something's got to give. And so I'm like, you know what? Options, this is for the birds. I'm done with this. And so I let it go. But the thought that, hey, look, how do I diversify income still kept with me. And I know many of your listeners, whether they're in Peru, Japan, Israel, anywhere international, or all your US listeners that you've cultivated, they're asking the same thing. How do I create that financial freedom apart from my main gig that I've sort of fallen into? And so that was the question I asked. And then obviously one of the books that probably is the most quoted in all podcasts out there, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, came about, right? And it turned on some light bulbs. Cash Flow Quadrant, the second version of the book, turned on even more light bulbs. And I was like, all right, maybe real estate, I can understand it. It makes sense to me. Let me go after that. And so I started doing real estate, on the side a little bit. And I don't know about you guys, but, I've heard some, there's like men out there, that they don't come straight home after work. They do philandering or, they do whatever they do. So my wife's like, hey, how come you're always working late? And, I am sure I understood her suspicions, but really what I was doing after I got done with my cardiology job, 9 to 5, I was going to the Real Estate Investment Association and clubs and playing cash flow board game. I was learning about wholesaling and single family homes and flipping and then coming home. And then, I said, babe, I'm going to start a real estate company. She's like, are you crazy? And so to cut a long story short, I started doing single family homes. And so that was the start of my real estate career.
Awesome. Is it, just on a tangent here, I was talking to one of my financial advisor friends, and he was telling me, and we're talking, and usually doctors are really terrible investors. Do you see that comes through like, with when you were in practice or anything like that? I mean, they're so educated. I think it's very difficult for them to review different deals, and I don't know. Have you found anything like that with doctors that you've worked with?
Charles, you're absolutely right. And I'm guilty of it myself. Like, it's because, it's a double-edged sword. You're highly skilled. You've gone through a ton of training. You know how to analyze a lot of process and details. But you also think that, hey, look, if I'm good at surgery, maybe I'm good at real estate. If I'm good at surgery, maybe I can buy a medical complex or office building, And it's that fallacy of thinking that sometimes gets people in trouble. Yeah. So Robert Kiyosaki says it best. It's not the investments that's risky, it's the investor. And so the lack of pre-education, the lack of consistent knowledge base of one specialized area is what dooms many investors. And physicians are not immune to that. No pun intended there. Yeah. But here's the cool thing. I'm so proud of this next generation of physicians that I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot of people who are not like, the typical, he's a 95-year-old gentleman in a white coat, with a little hammer tapping on someone's knee. I mean, those physicians don't exist anymore. We have these savvy investors, savvy physicians. People are starting wealth funds while they're practicing. There is a whole new realm, new breed of physicians that are becoming physician investors, physician activists, physician entrepreneurs. And I'm sort of proud to be part of that group.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. It's great to hear that. So tell us about you were getting into it before I took us on that tangent. Tell us about how you got started in real estate. When you started that company and your wife thought you were crazy, what was it? What were you doing?
Sure. So, I just did it because, hey, I just wanted to, diversify. I wanted to have something else going on. And, I had this entrepreneurial spirit. And so I want to do something beyond medicine. And so I thought, single family homes is a good way to get started. I tried wholesaling, way too time intensive, didn't work for me, that strategy. And for those people who don't know what that is essentially getting a deal under contract and flipping that deal to a rehab or someone else who will then buy it and then, do the full execution on the deal. And then, from what you get under contract for to what you sell it for, there's a little bit of a spread, whether it's 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. So it's a great strategy if you have a lot of free time, which I didn't. Then I started, I want to invest in Northern Virginia, DC. That's where I live, but it was just too expensive for me. And my wife gave me a stipulation. You're not allowed to use any money from our income to invest. So now I had to raise capital or I had to get a partner or something because I'm not allowed to use my own money. I'm like, great. And I have an LLC and the LLC has no track record. So no bank is willing to lend to it. Yeah. So these are the problems that most investors have, whether even if you're not a high income earner, this is a normal problem. So I had to be creative. And I'll tell you this, Charles, everyone thinks, hey, all these stories you hear of these investors, they're crushing it. You might have heard my bio. I'm like, oh, this guy has $330 million. Oh man, this guy, it was probably easy for him or someone taught him how to do everything. Well, I went online, I searched, accredited investors, and then this guy was selling a list of accredited investors. So I bought the list for like $39.99, and then there were investors like Mr. Green and Mr. White and Mr. Blue. I was like, oh, this is sort of weird. And then I actually reached out to this guy, Mr. White, and it was mixed with a bunch of real names too, so it was not just like all. But it was like he was like, yeah, if you wire me some funds through Western Union. I will wire you the funds for your first investment deal, your real estate apartment, the single family home you look at looks very promising. I'm like, oh, this is great. So I wired him like, I think $1,000.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, so I got scammed. I got beat up. All the stupid stuff that's potentially could happen has happened, but I stuck with it. I bought a $26,000 home in Atlanta where my dad lived. because I needed someone on the ground there, and he's an engineer, so he had real estate experience. And so we ended up selling it 3 years later for $78,000. Then I was like, all right, this is amazing. I'm hooked. So we grew a portfolio of 30 single family homes, bought a strip mall. 2015, I met one of my, he's a buddy of mine, and he was doing a little bit of real estate. I was doing real estate, but not at the real big scale. We're like, hey, let's come together and form a multifamily company to buy multifamilies. He goes, you mean like 100 unit? No way. No one does that except big companies. Are you crazy? And I'm like, no, I just went to this lecture and webinar. I heard this guy. He said he does it. He has something called syndications. I was like, what is that? It sounds like an illegal syndicate. It sounds like something illegal, a crime syndicate. I'm like, no, man, it's like raising capital from investors and buddies. So our first deal was in 2015. We brought a lot of these doctors who are, they're smart enough to know that they know what they know, and they also know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. And they trusted us because we had shown some success in real estate. So they invested with us, and we JV'd on a deal. Mm. And we're like, wow, we get paid at acquisition. We get paid, cash flow. And, this is like much better than the stock market. It's more safe. I love passive investing. So we did that for a couple of deals. And we're like, you know what? Why are we going through a middleman? Why can't we be like Harborside and just do the deal ourselves? Mm-hmm. So we're like, all right, let's do this. And so we formed Viking Capital, which is our multifamily investment company. And now we've done about six and a half years later, we've done our 14th acquisition, which was in January, Charles. And it was a 368 unit, $53 million deal in Atlanta, which we bought from a REIT. So we've grown our business. We've grown our team. We have, I think, 10 people on the Viking Capital banner now. And, we've raised like about close to almost 70 million. And we look to double that amount of raise this year as we try to take down 8 deals. So,
wow, that's fantastic. You're doing 8 deals for this year, for 2021?
Absolutely.
Wow.
1 down, 7 to go.
Awesome. So prior to retiring from medicine, how did you fit in both your career and your real estate investing career?
Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance. You really have to have time management really dialed in a little bit. The other thing is you have to give up the sleeping in thing. So I became a student of the 445 Club, right? So 4:45 a.m. I've been getting up for almost a decade now, and it allows me at least 1, 2, 3 extra hours a day that most people don't have. It allows me to, and the thing is, it's not because I'm just going to go straight into underwriting or looking at deals or talking to brokers or doing, some analysis or something like that. It's like I work on myself. So I'm working out most days of the week. I'm meditating. I'm journaling. I'm doing all that, sort of the inner game that allows my outer game to excel. And also, what gets scheduled gets done. So my schedule is actually mapped out. Like sleep is put in there, like hanging out with kids is put in there, hanging out with my wife. So people think, hey, that's anal. That's really strict. But Jocko Willink says discipline equals freedom. Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do. By having this discipline, I can decide to take 2 weeks off and go to, I was invited to Costa Rica to speak at a conference down there. And, I had it where I didn't skip a beat in any of the companies I was running. So if you create a schedule and you create a plan and you create your goals, your 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals, my goal at 32 was I want to retire by the age of 40. And if I'm still practicing cardiology by the age of 40, something went terribly wrong. I told myself that. I told my wife that, and she thought I was crazy. And I told my friends that, and they thought there's no way. And actually, before my 40th birthday, the income from real estate was so significant that I felt comfortable, backing off on cardiology.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great goal. And that's great that you brought in scheduling. I mean, that's something that I've done really brought into my personal scheduling is really time blocking over the last few years. That has been incredibly successful for me, where you just sit off. It doesn't have to be like, 4 hours for this. It can be like an hour. It can be an hour and a half. And if you do it consistently and you set it consistently, it's amazing how much you can get done, like chipping away at something as you're going. So that's something great for listeners.
And I want to share with your listeners some of the tools because, again, a lot of podcasts are great, a lot of good information. You hear people's stories, but how does that apply to them? How can they use what they listen to today to 10x their life, right? So one of the things I like to use is something called the Productivity Planner. It's by a company called Intelligent Change that you can buy on Amazon. It's like $20 or something. It's great because it forces you to say, hey, what's the extreme Pareto principle? What's the one thing that if I do that, everything else is unnecessary or not needed because I'll have moved the needle so much. And so it forces you to write down it gives you slots for 5 things, but it says, what's the one thing that if you did that, everything else is it's a moot point. Number 2 is I try to work in windows of 25 minutes or 30 minutes or like an hour at a time. And during that hour, you cannot divide that hour. You cannot go check Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You cannot go use the restroom. You're locked in and working on that one singular task. And so multitasking, as we know, is a myth. It's hard to multitask. It's actually inefficient to multitask. So lasering on one task and then going to completion is the key. And again, let's say you have a list of 30 things, guys, if you're listening to this, and all 30 things are sort of important, rank them in order 1 to 10. Or 1 to 30 or whatever. What's going to get me to my goal quicker? And once you know what's going to get you to your goals quicker, then you give that task highest priority and sort of finish that task before you go on to the next task. And then even if you need to carry it over to the next day, it's rather still focusing on that task. And then, Tim Ferriss says this: how do you know the task that needs to be completed the most? It's the one you're scared about to do or you're procrastinating on the most.
Yeah. That's truth right there, right? That's something. Yeah, it's a lot of those great from the 80-20 with Pareto, the 80-20 book. That's one of my favorite books of all time. And then the also is One Thing. So kind of those 2 books for increasing your efficiency and your productivity are kind of they're game changers, and they're fantastic for you to for your personal life and then also for your business life, I found.
And I want to share with your listeners who are obviously into real estate. Look, there's so many different flavors of real estate. There's single family, there's multifamily, there's commercial, like retail space, there's medical office, there is office in general, there is industrial, self-storage, and mobile home parks. Those are the big categories out there. And then there's all over buying notes and things like that. Everyone thinks that you need to start with multifamily single family, and then go on to whatever the next thing is. There's no set rule. Choose an asset class that either you have a mentor in, choose an asset class that maybe you have access to, or you have an unfair advantage in, and go after that asset class. But try to master one asset class before you go to too many others. I see a lot of people dabbling in this and this and this, and I'll be guilty of it too. Like 3 years ago, the CBD thing was a craze, and even though we are pretty much multifamily investment firm, we're like, oh, should we do a CBD project? Do I need to buy into this hemp farm? And, or should I focus on crypto and then go back to multi? And, the key is, look, there's so many shiny objects out there. Yeah. Focus on the asset class that you have the most success with, or you're very good at, or you're very attracted to, and you're willing to put the time, energy, and effort, and master that. Once you master that, and if you want to diversify, then so do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing too is the shiny penny and shiny object. Anything is with what we are now with social media and your phone and everything beeping and chiming every second. It just makes it even harder because I'm oh wow, someone tells me I made all this money with crypto or something like this, and you've been working for a year and a half learning the multifamily business, and now you want to change positions and go somewhere else. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that comes up for all entrepreneurs, and especially with so many different asset classes. Because you hear people, oh, I started multifamily, then I went to self-storage, then I went here. Well, that person mastered multifamily, then they went over here and they started doing deals here, and maybe they still do deals back here. But it's something where, focus is power, and knowing where you want to go and having a plan to get there and then spending time to do it consistently.
Absolutely, man. That's exactly the keys to the kingdom right there.
So Vic, say someone is currently working full time and wants to start investing in real estate. What would you suggest to them?
figure out one asset class that they want to invest in and really learn about it, and then become a very good passive investor. And what I mean is elevate yourself from a passive investor to even a sophisticated investor. So, there's people talk about these levels of investing. So level one investors, essentially, they're not an investor. They're essentially in debt. Level two investors, okay, hey, I'm starting to throw some money into stocks and mutual funds, but I really have no idea what I'm doing. Level three investors, okay, I'm studying, I'm understanding, and I have some kind of business system or plan. I'm investing somewhere. Level four investors are a smart investor. They invest in like 5 syndications. They really understand the syndication game, or they're really into self-storage, or they're really into some asset class, and they're learning enough to where they're asking the sponsors of the deal really good questions, and they're vetting them out. And eventually you want to be like what me and you are, Charles. We're level 5 investors. We're capitalists. We actually create the investment that other investors invest into. Mm-hmm. We're the ones who file with the SEC saying, hey, we're securities now. So that's the level of investments. And I encourage your listeners to sort of rise up that ladder. We all start at the bottom and we work our way up. So choose an asset class, become very good at it, and become what I call a sophisticated investor, where not only are you accredited and you have the financial green light or a stamp of approval to invest, but you actually become very sort of a mini master of it, and you understand it all. I have friends who all they do is invest in ATMs, ATM funds. I have friends who just do industrial. So it doesn't matter what you choose. Find something that's really appealing to you. And right now, if I could just speak a little bit on economic cycles, the 2 asset classes that have done the best during the pandemic are industrial and multifamily. Yeah. And I'll tell you why I know this, because I used to compete with maybe 15 groups for a deal. I just was on a best and final deal in Tampa, and there's 50 groups competing for that deal. It was a 360 unit deal, 50 offers. They cut it down to 30, and now in best and final, there's I think like 20, and then there's going to be another best and final. There'll be 15. So it's ludicrous. What's happening is all this money from other places dumping into multifamily. So yeah, just something to think about.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I mean, these hot areas are just blowing up. We've lost out on best and final on another property we were looking at about 2 weeks ago. So it's back to the drawing boards on that. But so for the mindset of going from a W-2 employee to a real estate investor, what would you suggest someone to do other than read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Right. So the goal, guys, is to go from your W-2 to a K-1. That's always the goal. Mm-hmm. You want to go from taking your earned income and converting that to portfolio and passive income. How do you do that? First, if you're accredited, you have a lot more options. If you're not accredited, don't worry. I'll still give you some options right now. There's things like Yield Street. These are like crowdfunding websites where you can actually invest a fraction amount into these deals and start earning passive income today, or probably by the end of the week. So Fundrise, Yield Street, those are the 2 ones I know. Crowd Street, I think Realty Mogul. There's a couple of them out there. So they have optionalities where you can invest just like a stock. You can invest, $1,000, $5,000 into real estate. That's yielding passive income and things like that. Next, if you want to start thinking about maybe owning your own home, consider turnkey investing. There's companies out there that essentially, for a nominal fee, they'll pre-screen houses that are ready to go, turnkey. They already have a tenant in place. You have to just provide the down payment. They even have the lending set up too. So now you have a single family home that's earning a certain yield, and you own it. So you're actually becoming an investor. And so that's another way of going about it. The other way is maybe partnering or JVing. You can, in a syndication, you can be a limited partner, but if you have, let's say you have a good amount of net worth, maybe you can help sponsor a deal. There are a lot of people out there that are very smart and they know real estate, but they don't have the net worth. And so you have the net worth, you can give that to them, And also this, obviously, again, education, meetups, real estate meetups are a great place to learn about different real estate opportunities, webinars, real estate investment association meetings, conferences, like going to multifamily conferences and learning about either investment opportunities or learning about, how to learn the business side of it, if that's your interest. So in this day, and then for people who are probably less into multi but more into single family homes, I still think Bigger Pockets is such a great resource for sort of a base level education. It's essentially Facebook for real estate, and it really will get you to sort of that sophisticated level in most real estate asset classes.
Yeah, and they have sections on that website for pretty much every type of asset class and all different and every type of strategy too, for purchasing, renting, managing it, whatever else you're doing. But awesome. So what mistakes do you commonly see real estate investors make?
Waiting to get started and waiting to make their first mistake. Mistakes are the tuition for greatness.
Yeah.
So you got to get out there. You got to get and the key is if you study enough and the goal. We're all going to make mistakes. I don't care how many books you've read and how many podcasts you listen to, or what conference you've been to. The key is the smart investors make small mistakes. The stupid investors or the ones who are uneducated make big mistakes. That's the thing. So I've made mistakes in multifamily, but in my worst deal, I'm going to give my investors maybe a 10, maybe 12% return. But, and it was great because, I wish I could give more. But in that one deal, I learned so much that my next 7 deals have been, off the root profitable, so off the charts profitable. So you learn so much from these things. But if you don't want to make mistakes, then what you'll do is you can exchange the price of paying a mistake for the price of paying for a coach or a mentor or a course or conference. Because what happens is you're shortening your learning curve. But what then happens is you'll make higher quality mistakes later on. Because at some point you outlearn the mentor or the coach, and then you have to keep moving forward. So it's okay to make mistakes. 1, learn from them. 2, minimize the size of the mistake. And 3, never make the same mistake twice. And again, shorten the learning curve with using coaches, mentors, or people who've already been there, done that.
Awesome. That's fantastic advice. So as we're finishing up here, what do you think are the main factors that have contributed to your success?
Yeah. My top 5 are this. You have to learn beyond what you've been taught in school, right? So my education started after I finished all my training. Learning real estate was a key piece of instrumentation. Now, next was being an insatiable reader, right? Sorry about that. Being an insatiable reader and using Audible. So any free time I have, I'm leveraging that and learning while I'm doing something else, whether it's working out, whether it's walking, whether it's doing things. Next is marketing. This is something that most people don't know, learn, or think they don't need to know. But becoming a thought leader, learning how to market, learning podcasting, learning how to raise capital from investors, engaging brokers, learning how to become a leader in your industry is super crucial, and it's not taught in school.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to become a really good marketer.
Oh yeah.
And then the final thing is a resilient mindset. It's really knowing that, look, every couple of months, you're going to come up across a seemingly impossible wall, but realize it's not a wall, it's just a plateau. And every time you think you're hitting a wall, just realize it's not a vertical wall, it's just a horizontal plateau that you have to just go through. And when you do that, you're going to be uber successful.
That's fantastic advice. I love the marketing because if I ever speak to anybody that doesn't know what they're going to go to college for, I said, just go for marketing. I mean, you're never going to have a problem bringing more business, more sales into your business or into someone else's business and trying to get a job from them. So.
Absolutely, man.
So before we finish up here, I just want to kind of circle back one thing we forgot. You had this thing about the freedom, and it was really cool that we were talking about before we hit record here. And can you go into that? I think it was the 5 different parts of freedom that you consider. Sure.
Here's sort of like my new sort of creed for life, Charles. It's these. I think freedom is what we all really want, right? We want money. Yeah, I get it. We want to be happy and all that. But it's really just being able to do what you want, how you want, when you want, right? So I've broken it down to what I call the 5 freedoms. And on top of that, I have another sort of litmus test that sort of guides me on whether I should do something or not. And I'll share with your guest. So it's really, freedom is broken down to what I consider, time freedom. The freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. And that's very hard to do. I know millionaires and probably even billionaires who do not have time freedom. So you want to have that. Next is geographic freedom. And this has been amplified by the pandemic. We're at a juncture in life where if you play your cards right, you can essentially work from anywhere in the world, whether you're in the Maldives, in Greece, whether you're in Nashville. It doesn't matter. If you can have a computer, internet, a Zoom connection, a phone, you can operate your business from anywhere. But have you built your business up to do that? Next is financial freedom. I think it's absolutely important that we all attain a sense of financial freedom where most of things in life are essentially taken care of. And now we're going after, big things for the sake of it. We're going after big charitable goals where we're trying to help people around us. We're trying to live these magic experiences in life. I think it's more about experiences at that point, because after your fourth Mercedes and your $5 million home, are you really going to be that intrigued by all that? No, you want, shark diving. You want to, hot air balloon rides. You want to have wine and Napa. You want to do those kind of things. Next is health freedom. I can't tell you how many people I come across who are wealthy or successful, but they're bloated, they're fat, they have gas, they have bloating, they have cancer, they have a heart attack, they have blood pressure problems. And that's not okay. So I think you should start work on anti-aging. You should have a sort of a vitality. You should sort of work on your health span and your lifespan. And if you build that into your routine, that will amplify all your other goals. And then finally, it's sort of a freedom from stress and have sort of this bulletproof mindset. And the word I like to use, Charles, is equipoise. Literally nothing can phase you. Okay, I lost out on 4 deals. No worries, man. My wife's so beautiful. My kids they love me. They give me a hug still when I come home. And my parents are still alive. Thank God. And you know what? I'm going to go after 7 more deals. And in fact, I'm going to blitz them. I'm going to preempt offer. All good. So it's nothing can really phase you. And for any time a door closes, that 7 more are going to open. So having that kind of mindset. So I call these the 5 freedoms. And the final thing as a bonus is this, guys. Life is too damn short, and you should really think of it as either life is a hell yes or life is a hell no. So do you want to hang out with that friend that you don't really normally like, and the wife is annoying and it's going to probably ruin your whole evening? That's a hell no. Even though you could go and just be kind and just do it for the sake of appearances, you don't have that much life left. You don't. So do things that are really going to intrigue you. And if they're sort of half, that's sort of a no. That's a nice way of saying no. So if you do more of this litmus test, if things should be either a hell yes, and if they're not, they're automatically a hell no.
Yeah, I love it. The older I get, I always say that the more freedom is important to me versus the money. You know what I mean? Having the freedom and being able to do what you want, where you want, when you want, with who you want is really why I'm in this business. And it sounds the same way for you, Vic.
That's awesome, Charles, man. Thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
So before you go, how can our listeners learn more about you and your business?
Sure. All the usual channels. I'm on Instagram at Vikram.Raya, but I'm also at Viking.Capital. And also our website for Viking Capital is VikingCapLLC.com.
Okay. I will put all those links into the show notes. So thank you so much for coming on, Vic, and looking forward to meeting up with you once we start traveling again.
Cheers, Charles. Awesome.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars LLC exclusively.